Professor Chandra, we eagerly await your Foundation Day lecture. The stage is now all yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you, Professor Baloni, Professor Kumar, Professor Chatterjee, members of the faculty, staff, students, members of the media. Thank you very much for having me here with you in your midst on this very special day. And congratulations to all of you and your predecessors at IIM Kozhikode for completing 20 years and for attempting to create a world of excellence in what is otherwise a sea of mediocrity in the country. On a lighter note, several years ago, one of my former colleagues at IIM Ahmedabad, after returning from your campus, had remarked that this was a place where even the views from the bathrooms were spectacular. If the side view is so spectacular, I'm sure the main play, which is education, would surely be very awesome here. So congratulations once again. On this occasion, I wish to talk about excellence in education and particularly about cultivating the imagination. For it is in imagining that we create freedom to think and build a proposition towards the world of possibility. Today, we live in a world of increasing change. The world's largest taxi company owns no taxi. Largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. Largest phone company owns no telecom infrastructure. World's most valuable retailer has no inventory. Most popular media owner creates no content. And the fastest growing banks have no money. Whether it is the autonomous car or the biochip or the strongest paper-light material graphene or the ubiquitous net, all are changing or threatening to change the way we live and the way we think. Most of us who were born more than 5 decades ago could never have imagined of these changes. There are many more to come which most education will not be able to grapple in times to come. Interestingly, 2 organizations have changed very slowly over centuries: universities and religious groups. They appear to be notoriously similar. Both want to change others, but do not want the same for themselves. I'm less qualified to talk about the latter, so let me confine this talk to the former. More on this later. So what does this phenomenal change that we are seeing imply for our societies? Let me answer this in a bit quixotic and indirect manner as professors normally do. Let me draw your attention to 4 axes that are becoming centers of our attention around the world. The first axis comprises of 4 elements: data, materials, biology, and behavior. The second axis comprises health, transport, energy, and food. The third axis consists of air, water, land, and forests. And the fourth axis is about individual and community. So why are they worth our attention? First, many disciplines revolve around these elements of these axes. Data revolves around math, computer science, statistics. Materials, engineering sciences, as well as manufacturing. Biology, life sciences, ecology, new technology. Behavior as sociology, anthropology, psychology, and actually most of management. If you look at 20 years ago, the second axis comprising of health, transport, energy and food were all in the government sector. Today, barely any are supported by the government. That's a phenomenal change that we are seeing in our midst. The challenge in this society today that we face, and consequently opportunities, is that most opportunities lie at the intersection of these axes. And most new jobs are occurring at the intersection. Let me explain this linkage to you. So if you want to work at BCG or a consulting company of that kind in public health consultancy, you'll be dealing with behavior, health, water, and community. If you want to work with Infosys doing a project on an airlines company like Lufthansa or an airport like Zurich, which they all do, you'll be dealing with data, transport, air, and individual. The challenge in times to come is not that you are an IT personnel or a consultant, but you'll be called upon to have knowledge about each of these elements that I just mentioned. And that is a tall task for education, because that's where new jobs and new opportunities are lying. So how does one prepare for these new opportunities and new jobs? It will require more than information and more than knowledge. Information is available on the net, and knowledge becomes obsolete very quickly with new technological advancements. Preparation for these new jobs and opportunities will require an ability to learn. Those who know how to learn will create impact in the society. I'm reminded of James Joyce's book, Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, in which the protagonist, an artist, Stephen Dedalus, when faced with the conflicting world in which he lives, he finds a spiritual and intellectual awakening. In doing so, he presents us a classic formula for managing in an uncertain and a changing world. He says, and I repeat here, I will use silence, cunning, and exile to meet the world, which to me, in this context of the axis of attention that I mentioned to you, is reflection for silence, smarts for cunning, and perseverance for exile to counter this changing world. Those are the new elements that define learning in times to come. Let me come back to the two ubiquitous organizations that I mentioned earlier, the university and the religious group. Both groups want us to learn only about information and knowledge. The new uncertain world demands that our institutions, in addition, teach us how to learn. Or else, there's a real possibility that our institutional structure will collapse at the onslaught of this new uncertainty and its changing phenomenal pace. This sentiment is very nicely captured by a professor of literature who talks about his alma mater and also a place where he teaches, Patna College in Patna, in his book, The College by a River. Incidentally, at the turn of the last century, Patna College was one of the finest undergraduate colleges of the country, and perhaps the best congregation of the meritorious faculty and students from all over the world. The writer, the professor, and the former student anguishes helplessly when he says, and I quote, I gave up trying to visualize what will happen to my college when I am no longer around, not even to hear and lament. Perhaps late on some not so far August or September night, when the water is high, the college will simply jump into the river. The Ganga will neither pause nor look back. It has seen too much already. Patna College is located on the banks of River Ganga. This is not a singular story, but the fate of many institutions in our country, and possibly many more to come in the future if we do not change. The question that arises, however, is why did it stop mattering to the community that the campus was losing its ability to inspire? Since I am at an aspirational education institution this evening, I will for a moment push the roles of governments in the background and focus only on what happens within the university. Tagore has a very interesting observation which might hold the light on this question. He speaks of reasoning, imagining, and caring. He writes, "In educational organizations, our reasoning faculties have to be nourished in order to allow our mind its freedom in the world of truth, our imagination for the world which belongs to us, and our sympathy for the world of human relationship." Let me relate this to the world that you all inhabit. Feasibility of an idea is defined by engineering and sciences. Its viability is defined by considerations of business and economics. But the desirability of the idea is governed by the humanities, arts, and psychology. Innovation or innovative ideas occur at the intersection of feasibility, viability, and desirability. It is this intersection that creates the environment to learn how to imagine and consequently how to learn. So why does this intersection not come naturally to academic institutions? Where is it that their classrooms do not inspire and the imaginations fail to matter? Classrooms and consequently learning is falling short on many counts. Let me recount just a few for you. 1, large enrollments. At the IIMs that I have been at, we've always increased the class size by giving arguments that HBS in the US does it even with bigger classes, without recognizing that HBS was also creating stereotypical, unimaginative managers. So the question becomes, can we create a small school environment in a large school setting? Can a large class be broken into smaller groups to provide the intimacy that is desired in learning? I once had a conversation with Leela Sampson, and I asked her, how did you learn when you were young? The great dancer as she is, and she was the director of Kalakshetra. And she said, I would sit on this wooden plank, nose to nose with my teacher, and she would ask me, she would make the facial changes, and I would ask to copy it. That's how learning was happening. Project-based learning, which is nothing but the project becoming a course, or themed housing and affiliations provide 24/7 learning and break this largeness into small, intimate ways of interacting. The second problem is standardization of learning. Different activities require different times to learn. A group project may require more uninterrupted time, while a personal writing assignment may require series of short sessions. But this does not happen in our institutions. We must recognize that all students are unique individuals with their own hopes, talents, anxieties, fears, passions, and aspirations. Engaging students as individuals is at the heart of raising achievements. This is now a universally accepted research finding. But these do not happen in our institutions. We have to create situations for each student to discover their own area to excel. This is not a T model of breadth and depth, because that's not enough. Indeed, it requires fusion of disciplines. The third problem, and that stands in the way of learning, is judgment. Standardized evaluation is a key culprit here, as it only tests limited response in a short amount of time. It creates success and failure that is not necessarily based on how one can apply what one knows. Elliot Eisner, a very well-known professor of art and education at the Graduate School of Education at Stanford, has a very interesting observation, and he says, not everything important is measurable, and not everything measurable is important. Here we have to learn to judge from the arts. You can't give marks to a poor drawing or somebody who can't perform a mudra. You have to just go on, keep working on it, and do it right. Grades are a big barrier to the process of learning. Can we think of a learning record, a subjective recognition of achievements that can be written along with grades? It builds confidence, morale, engagement, and most important, it builds hope. At the end, the buck, however, has to stop at the doorsteps of us faculty. Unfortunately, for most faculty, it's just a job. Heart of education is the relationship between the student and the teacher. Great teachers inspire students to learn by themselves. Teaching is neither a job nor a profession. It is an art form. It remains public service. Remember, this is why university organizations perhaps have not changed much. Tagore talked of teacher as a learner also, and he says, a teacher can never teach unless she is still learning herself. A lamp can never light another lamp unless it continues to burn its own flame. So let me talk a little bit about how to learn part. I strongly believe that it is research that provides the process of imagination and teaches us how to learn. Research is not about winning prestige. It is a route through which a teacher becomes a learner. It leads to progress of the self by advancement of knowledge and progress of the society by solving local challenges. It leads to developing an independent and unbiased opinion, and it creates a condition for learning in the classroom for the student and the teacher alike. Why? Then our classroom learning is bereft of research. To foster such an imagination, consider the following. When there is uncertainty about the future, we need to know how to learn so that we can be ahead of the curve as the environment changes. And this is research. Research is always about a question or a method to answer a question. You need to be skilled in at least one of the two. And this is education. Imagination, as a consequence, is cultivated by questions and search for answers. Let me exemplify. Suppose the question of the day before a decision maker was how to reduce congestion at a road crossing. What would a sociologist say? The sociologist would say, why do we not follow the right of way? A marketing manager would say, or ask a question, what kind of communication will make people respect the right of way? A signal processing and communications engineer would say, what kind of communication signal will facilitate smooth flow? An urban planner or logistics expert would be interested in finding if the design of the roundabout impacts the way and consequently efficiency of transport. A philosopher would ask the question, is the right of way a fairness question? A psychologist would say, do people who are more anxiety prone respect the right of way less or more? A behavioral economist would ask the question, does the attitude of drivers towards right-of-way vary during the day, and can pricing change this behavior? A behavioral neuroscientist would ask, what happens to neural connects in the brain when a driver approaches a road crossing? An automobile or mechanical engineer would say, what should be the safe speed to braking ratios as a car approaches a road crossing? The more you answer, the more new questions arise. So research is an effective way of learning. Can you keep it outside the classroom? You also see that learning requires training to ask a variety of questions that cut across various disciplines. Whether the process of questioning is theoretical or empirical, qualitative or quantitative, is just a matter of taste in the morning. To conclude, unless we change our classrooms to cultivate imagination through interdisciplinary questioning and research, we will not become institutions that matter. Consequently, making universities exciting, imaginative, questioning, rigorous, demanding, intellectually and emotionally secure, and empowering places is more important than prescribing detailed courses of studies. Thank you very much.